Kick us off, if you could just do a quick intro, kind of share about yourself and your role professionally, and then we'll go from there.
Hey everybody, I'm Stephen Price. I'm originally from London, but I've resided in Colorado for almost 9 years now. I'm a entrepreneur, turned C-suite executive, turned back to entrepreneur. So I've kind of gone through the full cycle, touched many facets, everything from being a bootstrapped founder with no access to anything, all the way through to being a CEO of some fairly well-known platforms and helping founders raise capital, help them figure out how to turn an idea into a business, and have touched almost every facet of the startup ecosystem.
Were you always an entrepreneur since childhood, or was that something that at some point you determined that was a path you were going to take?
A bit of both. My background is I had a wonderful childhood, but we come from quite a poor area, part of London called Tottenham, and it's the socioeconomic impacts are significant there, but you know what you know. So life was great as a kid, and but there were challenges. There was no money in the family or anything like that. So my mum was working 2 jobs quite often and working all the time and raising me and my sister on her own. And so we grew up in what in America you'd refer to as like welfare housing or projects. And then, but like I said, it was a great childhood. So I very early at an early age thought to myself I wanted to solve all my family's money problems and be a bazillionaire, and then I could pay and buy houses for everybody. And it didn't quite work out like that, but there's definitely some success in there, and that was what I can remember being one of the first drivers of me becoming an entrepreneur. And I quickly realised, coming out of school and going into a couple of my first jobs, quickly realised I didn't really like working for people. So I wanted to build my own business and be my own boss, and that was another factor which sort of drove me towards the entrepreneurial journey. So I embarked on that at quite a young age and built my first business in health and beauty, and it was a bricks and mortar business, retail stores, and yeah, that's fairly successful, that very first business.
Do you think that now, looking back from the other direction, having gone through, built businesses and built teams, that there were other motivations along the way, or other purposes that you kind of like?
Definitely.
Yeah. What are some of the...
It changes a lot. I think a lot of it changes with age and maturity and experience and understanding what works, what doesn't work, and figuring out what doesn't work. In my case, at least, was in my first couple of businesses, was just making a lot of bad judgments and making mistakes, which had mental impacts, emotional impacts, and probably more prominently was the financial impacts. But yeah, I think, like I said, I think that changes over the years, and especially in the last 10, 15 years, I've tried to improve in my leadership qualities and characteristics. So I've been, you never stop learning. I know it's kind of a cliche term, but it's very true. And that was something that was important to me. I mean, looking back on my first couple of companies, I wasn't a good leader, to be honest. I was so driven and focused. I had a very, I suppose, old school mindset of like, no BS, just get after it, like at all costs, try and be successful. And that led to building teams and a couple of companies, people I think enjoyed working for me, to be quite frank. And I reflect on that, and there's some regrets there, but that was part of my learning experience. And it turned me into what I believe now is a very good leader, somebody that has very different outlook on what entrepreneurship is. And as an entrepreneur now, I am very much driven by impact. Again, I don't want that to sound too much like a cliche term because it's thrown about, but I really do give a crap about certain elements of society and the world. The things that I personally, that's what's changed me from going from being a CEO and a leader, a C-suite executive for a good number of years now, to actually thinking, okay, I'm going to go and build something again, which is happening as we speak right now. I just started that journey again. So yeah, being impact focused. How can something I do help people, mostly in some way, but I'm also a realist. I still am driven by capitalism, but I like to use the term conscious capitalism. So I think there's a balance there, right? It's not a let's make money at all costs anymore. It's more about how can we make money while still having significant impact and being able to help people.
Absolutely. And I think that resonates. And I think that journey that you are going on is one that a lot of entrepreneurs seem to go on, which is like this morphing and evolution of why they're doing what they do. I'm curious, you mentioned that you've made a lot of mistakes, especially early on. Are there any that stand out, anecdotes or stories that were particularly painful, or you had a particularly acute kind of learning experience?
Oh, there's quite a few, but I'll give two what I think are important, which is when I do consulting or coaching, advising founders, two that I think are very important. One is from a legal perspective, and the other is, sorry, my dog might be chapping in the background. The other is from growing too quick and some of the challenges that brings in. I'll start with that one as well. So I was one of the sectors I was in was automotive, and I was in automotive for a long time, and I built, along with a team, a really successful car rental company, and it was a very capital intensive business, and I brought a business partner in, built that team, and we started that in 2007, and we just kept on building. It was, the success rate was amazing. It was getting 100% year-on-year growth almost. So things were going really well, and I conceptualized a turnkey business model that I presented to Hertz. And after beating their door down for 6 months, I think they got just fed up with me, and eventually they would see me. So I seen then one of the leadership team over there, and presented this idea to them, and I won't go into that unless you actually wanted to discuss that, but it was essentially that we would provide services of high-end vehicles for their clients because they didn't want to have that type of fleet, etc. Anyway, it went really well. They loved the idea. We launched it. It launched really successfully. The CEO of Hertz at the time was Mark Visora. He heard about it, flew in, he loved the idea, so let's launch it straight away in the US. We then totally got in bed with them, and it was an amazing relationship, and it got to the point of like, hey, maybe you should get a bigger facility because we can help. We actually utilize some of the spaces. We need storage for fleet and etc. etc. You'd be able to go into this airport and that airport, and it was honestly a huge massage of my ego. That we were nothing, right? We were a tiny little fit. We was an amoeba in that industry. And here we were, just basically working with Hertz, not for Hertz, with Hertz, and doing something amazing. And so I totally got sort of consumed with that and just committed too much too quickly. And that affected our productivity, it affected our resources, and it eventually put some constraints on those as well. And I don't want to get away because we continued to grow and it was an amazing relationship. But in hindsight, I wouldn't have done that because in 2015 they dropped us because they was like, okay, we've had 4 years of running this. We don't need you anymore. We can do this ourselves now, right? Whereas my company, we'd go maybe buy 10 Porsches. They can go and buy 1,000 Porsches, right? Or 10,000 Porsches. And it was really disappointing that we got dropped the way we did. However, I have to take responsibility as the then CEO / managing director of the company that I should have basically pulled back and maybe listened to my team a bit more and my business partner at the time. So there's that thing is, I think the overarching point I'm trying to make here is don't get too distracted by opportunities all the time. Opportunity is great. We always want to go after opportunities, right? But I think in terms of scale and growth, you need to do it within the means of your company and take a long, hard look and a year, 2, 3 years time, what that relationship looks like and how, what does that make your business look like and the effects of that. Can you actually support that? So there's that one. The other one is a legal point. I don't want to go public into details, but a business partner essentially screwed me over it was a co-founder of a business, and he was the CFO and had full full visibility, full control over the company financial accounts, loans, agreements, financial agreements, everything. And I fully trusted and I didn't give that enough oversight. And that led to siphoning off all the company assets and funds and capitalised into different accounts, and all of a sudden I was locked out of my own accounts, and yeah, that was, the business partner was gone off on his toes, and that equated to around about probably 90% of the wealth that I built over a number of years building companies and selling them, because I've gone through 3 acquisitions. So yeah, that was a real tough one to take, and it's a painful lesson to learn. And the point being is, I've done this so many times over the years, either with sessions over in Co-Founders Labs or Founder Institute, or even doing Clubhouses when Clubhouse went crazy for a while. Is I'm like, I don't care who your business partner is. It can be your brother, your mother, your sister, your wife. Make sure those legal agreements are in place, and make sure that you pay close attention to the fiduciary responsibility you have as a founder, a CEO, a CEO, whatever. But if you're in a leadership position, you really, really can't go fully autonomous with trust, in my opinion. It's a really horrible thing to say, but having been burned a couple of times, but this major one, I will never be in that position again.
I have one more question for you right now, at least. What is it that you love about the work that you do today? And I know today is kind of funny because today's a
yesterday I actually left Founder Institute, which I have to say an amazing company, and the CEO John is wonderful. Got a great culture there, and they're one of the big names right in the world of incubators out there, YC and Techstars and 500 startups. But I'm actually going into a venture studio to build in the agri-food technology industry. And I suppose if I apply that question to why do I love what I do now, I would say, why have I chosen what I have to do now? There's a few reasons in no particular order, but one of them is challenging myself to learn again, because I've built 3 companies. I've been a CEO of a few companies of some good sizes, but also built from 0 to 1 stage, and then helped, and all of those, everything in between. So I'm excited to actually learn something. I'm learning about an industry, the agricultural and food industry and the value chain. I have a very limited knowledge of that, right? I have an understanding of it because there's some ties. I'm based in Colorado. There's a lot of aggie out here. I've got some strong ties to a lot of agricultural organisations or institutions. And then the impact piece, right? I do see a massive challenge in water consumption, right? In terms of just the United States. I'm a big climate and environment. I'm an avid follower, watcher, and consumer of information. Right? I'd love to help to change. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but that would be amazing. So there's a strong synergy towards agriculture and food when it comes to those areas. And how are we going to continue feeding? I mean, this statistic I read the World Wildlife Fund annual report the other day, and part of that blew me away is that we're actually consuming, as a world, we're consuming 175% of our food production levels. Like, just think about that. We consume 175% more than we actually produce, right? And so I don't know if the world is burying their head in the sand right now and saying, okay, well, eventually we're going to reach this sort of tipping point, right? This how do we get back to it? And that translates back to the whole ecosystem and the natural equilibrium as well. And so I'm very passionate about connecting with how much impact this can actually potentially have in somewhere along that chain, and then learning something new. And that's why I'm loving my choice of what I'm going to do.
I love that. I think, when you can find something that's hitting on multiple levels for you personally and professionally, and those are the things that are really truly fulfilling, and it helps just to put in the enormous amount of work that you have to do to get these things rolling. So, Stephen, thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking a minute to chat with me, and I look forward to following up at some time.